Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command Podcast. Tony here with you, and today I'm super excited. Kamelot has a new song out. It's been out for a couple weeks now on YouTube, and I have to tell you, this is a band that I've really been waiting for a new album from for a very, very long time. An absolutely amazing band. They have definitely been a staple on my radio show for 23 years now. And I'm here to not only talk about the new song, which I think is amazing, but I'm also here to talk about the band in general and my experience with them, both as a fan and, of course, as somebody that has hosted my radio show for a very, very long time. Before I get into that, though, if you do like what you see and hear on this podcast, don't hesitate to give a thumbs up, leave a comment, or subscribe to the podcast. So let's talk about this. Kamelot, new song. First of all, one of the best songs I have ever heard from them. Really catchy chorus, but it's like this more anthemic thing. Like it's a more anthemic song where it's not like this crazy speed metal song that they've done a lot of over the years, but it's more of it's a little bit slower, but it just has such a groove to it. And the chorus is absolutely one of the catchiest things I've ever heard them write. Now, before anybody gets any ideas or asks, does it sound like Kamelot? And the answer is absolutely yes, it does. It definitely sounds like Kamelot. This is a band that has really developed their own sound over the past 20 plus years. Like when I hear a song by them, I know it's them. Like if I didn't know what the band was and I heard the song playing, I would know it was them, but there's just a specific way that they write songs and they have their own sound to where it's unmistakably Kamelot. Now, folks, I'm going to tell you, it's a blind pre-order for me. I'm definitely going to be buying the album. And, over the years, I've also had Tom Youngblood on my radio show. In fact, he has always come on this show over the last almost 23 years now. And I have to be honest with you, I have a lot of admiration for this guy for a lot of reasons. So I'm going to go back to 1998 when I started the radio show. Back then, you used to send these things out called CDs, and we had this thing called email. There were no electronic press kits. There was no streaming, no MP3s, none of that stuff. So at the time as well, there really weren't a lot of heavy metal radio shows out at the time because this was we're coming out of this grunge era. And there just weren't a lot of people doing what I was doing and some of the other people out there were doing. There just weren't a lot of shows here in the States, at least not as many as there are now. And I remember getting this email, and I believe it was Tom that sent me the email about his band called Kamelot, power metal band from the US. And he sent me 3 CDs. The 3 CDs were Eternity. I think Dominion was the second album. And then, of course, the brand new album, which had just come out, Siege Perilous, which was actually the first album Roy Khan sang on. And, now, granted, I love the band now. I love what they've done since the Fourth Legacy, because that, to me, was the turning point, which is something I'll get into here in a moment. But the first 3 albums, I was kind of like thinking to myself, man, these guys are great players, but the songs aren't really grabbing me. It's like, I felt like they were like one step away from being this monumental, amazing heavy metal band. And I thought Khan was an improvement over the previous singer that they had, but to me, it felt like there was something missing with them. And so, like a lot of other American power metal bands sort of starting out, that was the case with so many of these guys. And then one day, this is where it all changed, folks. This is where my love for Kamelot really just elevated to the point where this became one of my favorite bands. In fact, it was, I think, number 2 on my top albums of the year list for the year 2000. And that was The Fourth Legacy by Kamelot. That, to me, is where everything came together for the band, not only from the songwriting and production standpoint, but in general, these guys really set the stage for everything that has come after. Because since that album came out, they definitely have been one of the most consistent heavy metal bands in the last 23 years. I mean, in fact, I can't really go and name an album I dislike. I mean, they had one album that I wasn't a big fan of, which was Poetry for the Poisoned. But that was the last album with Khan. Something seemed off a little bit about that, but I'll talk about that here in a second. But Fourth Legacy was an album I listened to nonstop. I absolutely love the record. And I'll be honest with you folks, this was where I really began my love for this band. As I said before, they just had this streak of albums. I mean, they were putting out great records. And the thing that was really cool is Tom had always come on my show, and he was always a great person to have on. In a lot of ways, number one, what was interesting is when I would like interview him, and then I would tell him when the interview would air, he would always listen to the show, which is something a lot of these guys typically have never done. The other thing that I've always liked about Tom was that, look, I mean, there's a lot of guys in this band. I consider him sort of the leader of the band and like the facilitator behind a lot of what goes on in the band. Maybe he doesn't do 100% of that stuff. I don't know how the internal workings go. And I don't even know Tom that well, aside from him coming on my show. But what I can tell you is that it does take a lot of talent and ability to not only create the songs that this band writes, but to, they have all these guest musicians, and to take all these different people who are talented and putting them in the correct place on the album and knowing which songs they would sound great on. It's like, yeah, you have the talent to write, but do you put people in the right spots for them to shine? And I think even, when I have all these guest musicians with this band, they have always put these guest musicians in a spot on these albums where it's like perfect for them. Like, they sound amazing, and very few guys can do stuff like that. When I think of guys that can take, it's one thing to take a bunch of talented people, but if you don't put them in the right spot or use them correctly, your album could be a disaster. Well, these guys and Tom and everybody else in the band, they're able to take these guests and really make them sound amazing on these records by putting them in the right spot. Certain songs fit specific people's voices, for example, a lot better than it might fit somebody else. Things like that. So they've definitely done a lot of great stuff. And Tom has always been a guy that, anytime I've ever interacted with him in an interview, he's always been awesome. I mean, like, when I would talk to him, it was like talking to a dude that I've known for like 20 years. And maybe in a sense, since he's come on this show a lot over the years, maybe I feel that way, but as somebody that has followed this band for a long, long time, I've really absolutely been into everything that they've done since the Fourth Legacy came out. And one of the other things too, so I brought up Poetry for the Poisoned just a minute ago, and one of the reasons I don't care for the album that much, I mean, I like it, but it's definitely, in my opinion, if I had to pick an album that would be a low point for them, it would be that one. That was the last album that Khan sang on. And obviously, anytime I've ever had Roy on the show and ask him why he left, it's always kind of like, he doesn't really give me a specific answer, and that's fine. But something seemed off with the band. And, Kamelot then did something that was, something that a lot of bands don't do a very good job of. They ended up getting a new singer in Tommy Karavik. And the thing is, bands sometimes when they get new singers take a direction for the worst. And in my opinion, when Roy left and they had a new singer, they were able to just pick right back up. And that little dip they had went right back up to putting out the quality of stuff that they had been putting out before that. So to overcome a singer change, it's not an easy thing to do. And they did pick a guy that sounds somewhat similar, but they were able to really pull that off really well and get through that. And again, since that happened, they've been putting out great stuff. So I have to tell you, everybody, I am really digging the song. I'm going to put it in the show notes. It's called One More Flag in the Ground, and it's by Kamelot. And folks, I have to tell you too, the other thing is the album itself, I'll be honest with you, it's called The Awakening. It's definitely an album that I'm definitely going to be buying and playing on my actual radio show a lot. And I'll be talking about it a lot too here once maybe they release another song, or once the album comes out, then I'll do a review on it. But I'm really anticipating this. I'm really excited for this. And folks, I have to tell you that if you like power metal and you've liked Kamelot, I don't think they're going to miss a beat. In fact, I think by listening to this song, I think this is going to be one of the best albums they've ever put out. But we shall see, because we've only heard one song. But right now, this is a great start. I cannot wait I can't wait to listen to the rest of it. And folks, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.